It will go by class size. So each one of our buildings, we worked with our Human Resources Department, John Castrovinci. We worked with our academics area, Dr. Roberts, Mr. First. We worked with our building principals, and we looked at what the current class sizes are, what the projection is for next year, and that was a determining factor on which classes we could condense and which ones we couldn't.
Do you anticipate having to reopen our district policy on class size?
From what I have received, no.
And are the principals aware of, they've worked with you?
They,
I'm uncomfortable because I don't know, when you say, things will be restructured, perhaps you know what that is and other people know what that is, but I don't, and I don't believe the other board members do either. And it's hard. It's very difficult to vote on the budget, knowing that these cuts are going to exist with professional teaching staff, also the paraprofessionals, and the others, custodial maintenance. How is this going to look, and how is this going to affect the day-to-day instruction of our students across the district?
I think it would be helpful at our next meeting that you have an overview of that before you vote. I certainly can provide information for you, but I want to make sure that everyone is educated before they vote on anything. That's very important. We did a restructuring last time, and we did a curtailment last time, and it is going to look very similar to that.
So I would hope that you could get this to us prior to the day of the vote, so we could.
You will have that before that.
Thank you.
So specifically, we really don't know where the cuts are at this point in time as to how many reading, how many math, English, et cetera, that we're going to cut within that 40 staff structure.
We do know, and we can provide that for you.
Yeah, I like to say I agree with Mr. Ryder and Mrs. Matthews that we are in the dark in this area. It hasn't been discussed. And, I would like to see where
The profile.
where those cuts are going to be and how big those classes are going to be. Because we're having 40 or 50 size classes. I don't know if we're doing what's best for the students. That I couldn't live with approving something that would be that big in nature. So I thank Mr. Ryder and Mrs. Matthews for bringing this up because it was never brought up here before, and I think we need that information before we make a final decision.
I have a question for the board. We're talking about class sizes, and class sizes is very important to all of us. It's hard for our kids to learn and comprehend when they're just stuffed in there. But from what I believe we heard the last meeting, the meeting before that, we might not have a huge class size now, but it looks like next year we're going to have it, and the year after we're going to have it. Unfortunately, it looks like we're going to be stuck with a huge class size that no one wants. If we are lucky enough to get away from it this year, we're running right into it next year and then the following. So I guess my question to the board is, before the vote on the 22nd, have we done enough? Do we feel that we've done enough work to vote on this budget on the 22nd? Or do we need to work some more, with any aspect and with anything? I think, we're going to the limit on taxes, but do we have to look at other things before we go, just say, okay, we'll vote, and then we have to face this next year? I know we don't want to deal with it. Numerous teachers don't want to deal with it. Administrators don't want to deal with it. Is there more that we can do so we're not in the same exact position next year and the year after? I don't know. I want everybody's opinion.
Mr. Pinnabone, these are all legitimate and great comments. But I think we're mixing two different things. One is an overall framework of what budget dollars will be for next year. The second one, and it's been largely on faith so far, is that the administration is going to take whatever monies are approved and do the best job at deploying those dollars to serve the needs of the children of this district. That's the execution phase of the budget. Not to be lost in that is that it does not end with the approval of any budget on May 22nd. Because if I read Mr. Simonetta's slides correctly, in his status report, nothing has changed. So there will be large cuts coming up to be followed by the same situation over the next 2 years. My concern is a broader one that I'm not sure the public fully appreciates. And that is the financial path that this district is on, in my opinion, could very well lead to a distressed school district. And that's not just a semantic term, but it's a legal term. So the question for Mr. Simonetta is that a possibility that we would have to face something much more draconian over the next 2 years?
The short answer on that is I don't anticipate much more draconian. On a previous presentation, I'm projecting a little over $4 million deficit next year based on the current obligations, and I think it goes up to $7 million the following year. What we're hoping to do as we get through this budget cycle is, as I indicated, continue to look at some of the ways we have been spending, the way we do things, savings that are going to reduce these future cuts. But at the end of the day, based on the obligations that we know that we have, we are going to be looking at this next year and the year after. I don't think I've ever said that we weren't going to be that way. If I can just step back a moment, if I answered your question.
I think as best you can for the moment.
Okay. On some of the other issues, I think at a previous meeting, the list of subject teachers or the staff that was going to be cut was read in numbers. I guess the document wasn't presented to you, and I think that's something that will be done. There was also, and I don't know if it got to the public level or to the board even, but we did have a class size projection based on these cuts. So the information is there, and I apologize if it didn't get to you at this point. And of course, we talked about the future and the status of future budgets based on what we have. All I can continue to say is that, this year, we started off at an $8 million deficit. We're making recommended cuts that at this point, they will affect or change or curtail, whatever word you want to use, the district, the programs, but we're not losing any program. With the projections for future years, I don't know if that's going to occur, if that's going to continue to occur, unless we do something drastically different.
Mike, going back on your numbers, your projection for next year is a loss of or deficit of,
About $4.5 million,
and the following year again is?
7.
Right. So $11 to $12 million in total. If you look at that and what you projected earlier tonight, you said roughly the expenditures that we have capability of control over is $13 million. So if you were totally to eliminate the other expenditures, and things that make up those expenditures, give some examples are?
Supplies, textbooks, Utilities is one of those, and, you know, we just do things differently that we can save some money, or we take a chance. But rebidding garbage, you know, even the custodial and cleaning and maintenance of buildings that we can not do, or was one person suggested, you know, let go. So it's just basically very few items in that.
And I think somebody stated in another meeting, so when you talk about how severe the cuts could be or what the impact is, it does start to paint a different picture. Another cut I think somebody said one time is you could cut out all sports and all busing, and you still wouldn't have enough dollars to cover what the deficit is.
That's correct.
So it does have to be severe.
Well,
And that's-
obviously, with 4 million for the projection for next year, 4.5 million, draconian at that point, you know, is the word, because we are going to be affecting programs if we don't do something. If we can't come up with something during the course, again, May 24th on. So, yeah, it will be draconian, because then you're getting into programs, which we don't want to do.
Mr. Simonetta, I have a question and a response to Dr. Mosquitis. I agree, the budget isn't over once we vote on it the 22nd, we start again on the 23rd. My previous question was, but we have approximately, I guess, 14 days until we vote on it. I think about the 30th, when 76,000 was found in the athletic budget that didn't cut anything, we were able to save that money. Is there any reason for us to believe, I mean, do we feel that within 14 days, we might be able to come up with something if we look? You know, or is that, I mean, or do you feel we've exhausted what we can, you know, get rid of without hurting the student? That's my question. Have we exhausted all of those options at this point?
Given the timeframe, the other options, other than programs and additional staffing, you know, anything significant, I think we've exhausted it to where the district administration, or I'm comfortable not having a good history of the expenditures of the district and the way we purchase and do things. Nothing that's going to make any significant changes that's going to reduce that, as I said, other than going into the staffing.
And Frank, you just mentioned about the 76,000, but I'm gonna ask Jim. We saved 76,000, but there are certain things in there that you're really not saving, but rather the cost will be on to the parents potentially for some purchases of things, and/or there's gonna have to be some other source of funding, you know, if you find somebody that comes forward with a donation to do some things. So there are expenditures that are going to be picked up in other fashions, which the parents haven't incurred in previous.
Mr. Fainal, we heard last time, speaking of athletics, and I don't want to dwell on athletics, but we also heard about ticket price increases and advertisements, specifically at Cottingham. We've heard tonight about, thank you, Mr. Prokrivsak, in regards to the ticket prices. Have we looked at the advertising? I mean, I don't know why we haven't been doing that for numerous years, but that was brought up. We discussed the ticket sales. Has the advertising been discussed yet?
I will tell you that Mr. Prokrivsak has set up a meeting with the Chamber of Commerce for him and I. Gave me a couple of dates, we haven't committed yet. Him and I to go out there and present to them how wonderful it would be to advertise in the Easton School District. So, and again, that's part of that folder that it's just thick, that we're continuing to look at. But to put a number on all those things and some of those things right now in this timeline, and again, the significance of it, when we're looking at $4.5 million, it's not going to do what we need to do. Yes.
I think one of the things that is probably the most perplexing over the last 4 years is we truly have a choice. And we can control our own destiny as a district. Each employee can make a profound difference. And that does mean sacrifice. And we've seen some of that sacrifice by many of our employees over the last 4 years. But that doesn't mean that it needs to stop. If we truly want to make change and we want to have control of our own destiny and we believe in what we have and we want to hold on to that, then there needs to be more sacrifice from each one of us, myself included. And I think many people have come forward, and they are willing to continue to sacrifice because our students are number one, and they will always be number one. And anyone that has ever gone into the educational profession or has chosen to work in our school district has done it for one reason, and it's for the students. So I really ask that each person reflect on why they entered the profession or why they entered into the doors of the Easton Area School District, because it is our choice, and we can control our destiny. Because if we choose, conversely, the opposite, the state will control that destiny. And as Dr. Mosqueda said, we will be a distressed school district. And then we won't have that choice. And we won't have contractual obligations that we have now, because they will be null and void. And we will not have a well-rounded education. We will have core curriculum. So we need to look at that word choice, and we need to really ponder where we're going to go as a district, what our vision is, and what we want every student in the Easton Area School District to experience, because we are the ones that are controlling our students' destiny.
Any other comments?
I just want to say one thing. You know, we looked at this projection. We bought the software 4 years ago and saw this projection. We knew what this was going to look like. We knew what it was going to look like yesterday, last year, today, and tomorrow. And it's disturbing when we say, well, given the time we have, you know, there's only so many things that we can find for savings and everything. We knew as a board, and you as a superintendent for the last 4 years, that this was the projection. And these things needed to be looked at from day one, every single day. And it's been disturbing to me for the last 3 years that we always get down to the 11th hour and we're scrambling. And I'm not saying that I know Mr. Semineta is new on this, you know, on the administration team, and I respect very much the amount of work he's put into to try to straighten things out. But the rest of us have been here for 3 and 4 years. And we needed to be thinking back then, we need to be thinking now, we should have been thinking, we should have been moving forward in a thoughtful manner. You know, to say that we're gonna have to be distressed next year or the year after is disturbing, because we've had 5 years to think about this, 4 years. And it doesn't sit comfortably with me. I haven't been comfortable with one budget since I've been on this board, because I haven't felt that we've done our due diligence in digging deep and finding the cuts and finding the ways the way we needed to find them. And, you know, if we're going to finally do it now, you know, that's good that we're moving forward, but it's unfortunate that it's taken this long. Please, I mean, you as an administrator need to be looking at your budget and looking at what you can do better, what you can do differently, so that we're not going to be in the distressed state that we're all predicting in 2 years.
Mrs. Ellison, I totally agree with you, and I will say, I've made a concerted effort from the first day that I was interviewed for this position, and I said that there were certain things that were not sustainable. And I did a projection, and I did a memo to the community, and I did a memo to, you know, another important element of our entity. And I did do a projection, and I did crunch the numbers, and I saw that we were going to have a financial crisis. And it was stated, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about. We have money in the fund balance. We're going to be fine. I certainly would not say that we had a challenge or that we had a crisis if we didn't have that, because people make lifelong decisions on monetary payments, and people have lost homes, they have lost marriages, and they have lost the ability to send their children to college as a result of contractual obligations that were promised to them. And to me, that's the biggest disservice that we could do to any entity. I think that people are looking for justice, and there's no justice in this. We have a concern, we've had a concern, and we continue to look every single day to do the best we can. And we have looked at every single thing, and we have planned accordingly, and we continue to plan accordingly. I take this very seriously, and I always have. And I think as a board, I think all of us have taken it very seriously. These are unprecedented charters that we have been on for 4 years, and we've worked diligently within the confines of our district and with our board to try to improve. And are we there? No. Am I pleased with that? Absolutely not. But we need everyone making a concerted effort and working together on behalf of our students. It can't be just a superintendent. It can't be just the teachers. It can't be just the administration. It can't be just the custodians. It can't be just the paraprofessionals. It can't be just the administrative professionals. It has to be everyone. Transportation, and if I missed anyone, I certainly did not mean to do that, but it's working together as a family and as a community.
Just on my comment is, I made a statement back in '07 and '08 when, and I don't think anybody except Tim and I, and Tim might have been in Iraq at the time, but I made a statement when they were hiring like 30, 40 teachers a week. And I said, you know, who is going to pay for this in time? Because it's great to fill every need of every student we have, but sooner or later, we're not going to be able to fill those needs, and we're not going to be able to maintain 100-some teachers that we hired. And everybody said, oh, we got plenty in our fund, and don't worry about a thing, and so forth. And I didn't buy that. I said, you know, I voted against most of those hirings. Anybody wants to go back and look. And because I knew that sooner or later, we would be paying for it, and nobody was saying the same thing I was. But we hired 100-and-some teachers under 2 or 3 superintendents, and now we're paying for it. The teachers are paying for it. When we hired them in good faith, and, you know, we may have to lay more teachers off. That's sad, because they have worked very hard, as you said, for 5 years, and now we have to lay another group of teachers off. And it just wasn't right. I think you might have been at the tail end of that. I don't know, some of that hiring that we were doing, it was like, you know, grab every teacher you could, and I knew that wasn't going to work. And Tim and I voted against just about every budget that came up because we knew it wasn't going to work in the future.
Other comments?
Yes. What we have discussed within the last half hour has essentially all been nickel and dime. Oh, we're going to get $76,000 out of athletics. We probably will get $65.98 out of toilet paper. But the reality of it is, we need to continue to try and negotiate with our biggest union, and that's the Professional Education Teachers Union. Due to the fact that it has been mentioned over and over and over that that contract is, we cannot sustain that contract. Fiscally, if we're responsible, we need to continue to work on the negotiation with them. The great thing about the teachers is they have an excellent contract. They took a 12% raise on average, a 12% raise on average, and then they took a freeze, which, tremendous. Went to the union and decided to take a freeze. that was in the realm of $27 million. But when the term "we can't sustain it" comes up, we obviously need to renegotiate that and continue that contact. As a former teacher, this kills me, because I think the teachers deserve everything they can make. But also as a principal and an educator for 35 and a half years, when teachers are making more than assistant principals, I have a major problem with that. Because when we sat down with the Act 93 people, principals, and said, we'd love to give you, but we can't, so will you take another freeze? And they said yes. And we did that with several of our Act 93 people, groups. And until we as a group, administratively, can sit down and renegotiate with the teachers, you're going to cut 40 teachers this year, 70-some people. You're going to basically do the same, go back to the drawing board next year, because obviously next year's a 6% raise, the following year's a 6% raise, those are averages. And then we added another year on, which was in good faith, and that's another 6 or 6+. And when we say, well, we're behind $4 million next year, we're behind $7 million the following year, boy, let's just keep on projecting, because obviously 4 to 7, that grew, and obviously I'm sure it'll continue to grow. I don't know what to say. Please renegotiate. Please look at our situation. Please be realistic about an unsustainable contract. There's no other place to cut. I don't appreciate getting emails from professional staff essentially telling me, well, we could cut books, we could sell buildings, we could cut transportation, we could cut here, there, and everywhere, but people need to look at themselves, because we've looked at every possibility of cuts. And I know that because on a negotiation committee or a financial committee, we have looked almost everywhere. And there's one major obstacle, and that employs the vast majority of the people in this school district. And unless we work out something with them, we're going to sit like this for the next 3 years. That's your answer. Can't make it any more clear than that.
Thank you, Bill. At that point, any other comments right now? Hearing none, floor is open to the public. Kurt?
Yes, again, Kurt Ely, College Hill. It's been a long night. I was thrilled to hear the comments made by our superintendent and also by Mr. Riker, except for one thing, and that is I keep hearing about how every opportunity has been taken to reduce this budget. And I ask this question, how many teaching staff over the last 3 years have been eliminated in the Easton Area School District? Dr. McGinley, how many?
Currently
Total,
with this year?
including this new round of...
Approximately about 110.
Right. How many janitors and other staff-related positions have been eliminated over the last 3 years?
Approximately maybe 18.
Okay. How many administrative positions have been eliminated in the last 3 years?
I think all that is delineated on that chart.
Which
Do you have
is,
that?
how many
is-
positions?
7.
7 positions over
Central administration.
3 years.
Actually, since 07,
07, 08. Okay, well,
I did a presentation, I don't know if we still have that.
Can pull it up,
Summary
that
of
way you'll
staff
see it.
over the last
That would
few
helpful.
years.
right. So where we are is that how many administrative positions are being lost this year as part of this proposed budget?
For next year,
Right now, for this budget right now?
9.
Okay, none this year. How many last year? How many administrative positions were lost last year? Two. I think you see where I'm going with this. This district, I've said it before, is top-heavy when it comes to administrative staffing. There are things being done, especially on a secondary level, that need to be very, very carefully evaluated, with positions, I believe, being eliminated. We keep eliminating teachers, we keep eliminating other support staff, but the administrative side of things continues. And I understand that there was a reduction or an agreement by administrators to not take an increase, and I truly do appreciate that very much, Mr. Riker, I really do. Ryder, I apologize, Mr. Ryder. I truly do, because I know that it's difficult. This is a difficult environment that we're dealing with, but it's difficult for me to sit meeting after meeting after meeting and hearing year after year after year about these dramatic reductions in teaching staff without seeing the commensurate level of reduction in administrative staff. And not only percentage-wise, as though things need to be balanced out perfectly, but I strongly do believe that evaluation needs to be made of the way in which the administration is administering our school district. I truly believe that there are dramatic changes that could be made, improvements that could be made. It appears quite obvious to me that there needs to be change made in the way in which we are doing what we do in order to accomplish what needs to be done. And I believe that Mrs. Ellison is correct, and others who have said that this is like something that's been coming for years now. And changes, dramatic changes in the program, dramatic changes in virtually everything that you're doing, and that's not the school board's responsibility. That is the administration's responsibility. You say you saw this coming and you tried to warn the board. It didn't feel that way to me over the years that I've been here. I truly feel as though there's been just a tremendous failure on the part of this administration to do what needs to be done in providing for the kinds of change that need to occur in our district so that we can afford education in our district and still provide quality education. And this board deserves the very, very best from this administration in that regard. And you're going to start a new year. And I ask, please, that every effort be made to make the sweeping changes that must be made in order to provide quality education and have it be affordable. This is incredibly important. And again, why aren't there significant cuts being made in administrative staffing in this district for this year?
Take a look at the.
I think it's important that you look at the chart. And if you look at central administration,
Right.
you'll see that we had 16 staff members before I was superintendent. And we are going to have 9 next year. And I will tell you, every one of those central administrators goes above and beyond doing multiple jobs, because that's our responsibility. Exactly what you said. We can't look at teachers without looking at ourselves, because our students are in the hands of our teachers
Are you saying to me that there are 9 administrators in the Easton Area School District?
in central administration.
In the Easton Area School District, how many individuals are titled as administrators, providing administrative duty within the district?
We have it delineated in the areas right there. The first one is central administration, so you'll see what we started with and what we currently have. We started out with 16 before I was superintendent. We currently will have 9. In building administration, we started with 21 before I was superintendent, and we have,
21.
yes,
And we started with 50 and we have 47. And when you figure it all out and you add it all up, I'm not saying that the central administration configuration hasn't changed. What I'm saying is that the administration across the board of the Easton Area School District needs to be very carefully looked at, that there are definite changes that can be made in the way in which this school is administered. and that savings can be incurred in that area, and that you have, as the superintendent of this district, a responsibility to provide that kind of direction and guidance. It is literally a crisis environment that we're dealing with, and those numbers do not in any way, shape, or form indicate that you've taken that seriously to the degree that you need to. There are ways this can be done differently from an administrative level that will save money in this district and still be able to provide quality education so that we don't have to continue to lose the quality educators that we are losing. These programs are important, and I'm just asking you to please, please do everything necessary. Please, board, hold the administration to fire in this regard so that we can have the quality education that our students deserve and that we can afford. And thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Just to assure Mr. Ely and the public, that has not gone unnoticed, and it is going to be worked on. But it struck me in looking at the numbers that are up on that screen right now. The magnitude of the problem is such that if you eliminated every administrator in this district, you would still have a problem.
Agreed. No doubt about it.
That's how significant a problem we have.
Hi, Glenda Kello, Executive Vice President, EAEA. Would you mind pulling up a slide that really disturbed me? There was a slide that Mr. Simonetta had up on the board that was a blue slide with a statement about negotiations.
Was it about the sustainability?
Yes.
Do you have that?
If you don't mind. I was wondering where that particular statement actually came from, because I was involved in the negotiations, and that was not stated. That was absolutely not stated during negotiation process. We were told by the district, who was using Mr. Blunt as a negotiator, that in fact, when he handed us the salary schedule, that it was in fact sustainable. We would have not approved or gone to our union and told them otherwise. There would have been no sense to do what we did in opening a contract and making it something that was worthless, that would be renegotiated again and again, year after year after year after year. That would make no sense. So that statement is absolutely incorrect. That's not something that was discussed at that meeting.
I think that was shared, matter of fact, it was right there,
was.
May 26th last year. That was shared during the presentation when the board was actually voting on this issue.
Mrs. Holtzberger did the
Well,
presentation
yeah,
at the
well, she
meeting.
may have said that statement at that particular meeting, but that was never, ever stated at our discussions behind closed doors at negotiations. That statement was never made. We were told that what Mr. Blunt had put together and handed to us as a union was in fact a salary schedule that was sustainable. I'm telling you exactly as it was stated in that meeting.
Mr.
I just
Fano.
wanted,
I don't think bottom line out of it is, it's not going to matter a whole lot, because the bottom line is, as we calculate it, we can sit here and we can point
Okay.
the fingers back
I
and
j-
forth
I
and
just-
everything. And the facts are going to be the facts of what the contract is and of what has to be done to make it through.
May I ask you, Mr. Fainall, was this part of a public meeting, a
Yes,
public
sir.
record?
Yes,
Yes.
it was.
Was an objection raised during that meeting that this was untrue?
surely,
I think there was.
Surely. surely.
Carrie,
By
I
you,
have
Ms.
to ask,
Keller?
I was in the back of the
Well, I believe
audience, I know
Jenna
that.
actually made the statement at that point in time, but surely,
Was there
Yeah.
an objection made during the meeting?
I think there was a discussion that occurred at that meeting about the contract and everything.
My comment was it was unsustainable, and there was a couple comments based on board members that made comments that
Right.
it was going to be unsustainable.
right. There was a conversation that went back and forth after this statement had been made, and I mean, I was at the board.
Ms. Kello, I'm glad you spoke today, because as you know me since a kid, I hate he say, she say, back
I
and
know,
forth.
I know.
So I'm glad you, I really am, I'm glad you came,
I
because
just-
as a
okay, go
new
ahead.
board,
I'm sorry.
we've been asking you know, as a new board, 6 members, we've heard one side say this, one side say that. So I appreciate, I really do, you coming up here. You know, so we could put this to rest finally.
I want to be done with it.
Right, absolutely.
honestly.
You,
Yes.
at least you get paid for it. We're volunteering and we're dealing with it. But my question is, at that board meeting, when Kerry Myers said, you know, we watched the clip, when he said, you know, this is not over, we're going to start negotiations tomorrow, why didn't somebody, a teacher, I don't care who they were, why didn't they jump up and say, wait a minute, that's not what we
No,
discussed?
what Carrie had meant by that statement, which we had discussed again behind closed doors, was that we would come back and come up with thoughts and ideas about how to make cuts that weren't necessarily about a salary schedule, that there were other thoughts and ideas like materials and supplies and so on and so forth, those things that we've already, you know, had sent forward to you guys. So that was the point in coming back to the table and talking about some other things that might be able to be done in the future that necessarily didn't deal with the salary schedule. So, in any case, part of that also was the retirement incentive. And that will lead me into the next thought. I know that we had negotiated, or not negotiated, but talked about the retirement incentive, of which the board approved. And I was just wondering if you were going to announce the fact that there was a retirement incentive that was approved. And is that going to be, in fact, reflected in the budget, in the future budget? Because obviously, if teachers move forward now to retire, and if there is, you know, some savings to the district, is that going to be reflected in the budget in the future? And will that impact whether or not we have to make so many awful cuts to our staff?
I think I can address that only in a couple ways. Part of that is negotiation, so I will not get into that in great detail. At this point, offers for early retirement have been made to multiple groups, not just yourself. And the results of those, okay, as long as they're back in time before the budget's passed, should be addressed and updated in there.
Okay.
But, that being said, there still has to be consideration that there's still an impact for next year. So if the results are not included in, all it does is help to lessen the impact next year as compared to the full impact this year. So in other words, the $4.5 million, if it's not included in this year, may become $4 million next year. That type of thing.
My
But that's-
understanding.
But I mean, at one place or another, it will be reflected.
Yeah, I was hoping that that would be your answer. In fact, if it could help teaching situation this year in regards to lessening numbers of those that are proposed to be lost, I'm hoping that it's used in that way.
Mr. President, we're, as a negotiating team or a board, we're still waiting for the various groups to get back to us if they accept, correct?
That is correct. That is correct.
We
And
moved
that's some-
forward as a union today in regards to the teachers, so teachers are aware of it. So I'm sure that some will very quickly get back to you. In fact, I know that there are ones that actually let the administration know today.
And
they
because
would
that was
retire.
done through, per se, that committee and executive session and everything as being a personnel action, that actually, the MOU of that has not been presented nor voted on by this board at this point in time. It must be voted on in the future, but that because it had the blessing to move forward with you is what made it, you know, something that could be offered.
Is that something that you will be doing very quickly, that vote for the MOU?
Well, probably around the 22nd. But again, it's in place, so if the teachers accept, okay, the ones
Okay.
that are interested, that will be approved as that. It's no reneging on that, it
Right.
is out there and everything.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Jenna Broadhead. I guess my question is, what is the timeline? I've not been
What-
given a timeline. I did go forward ahead and offer it to teachers, did not know. I was waiting on word back. I do not know the timeline, so that would be great help to me right now.
We are going to approve the budget on the 22nd. So knowing it by, and I've been picking on Mr. Simonetta for this, and Debbie at the same time, that if we find out on the 21st, he's going to burn the midnight oil, or the two of them are going to be burning the midnight oil, to make those adjustments for the figures that we will see on the 22nd. If we find out, and I don't think we gave a hard and firm date on that one, I'm thinking we said something like beginning of June, which means for the ones that we wouldn't hear back from until June 1st, that impact, as I mentioned to Glenda, then would be noticed and observed for next year's budget.
My understanding is names have to be in by May 17th to be on the May agenda, correct?
Okay, so somebody help me on that one.
HR, the human resources agenda is normally meetings on Tuesday the 22nd, so Thursday the 17th, we normally have our agenda. But we normally have the, leeway to add additional items.
So if people came in up to the 21st, you could very well add them, as well as Mr. Simonetta can make the adjustment.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Couple things I'd like to clarify as well. A couple meetings ago, and I don't know if it was last meeting, it was discussed that pension is going up, PSERS is going up. PSERS is not going up. Pension costs are going up. Pensions are not going up. And this is due to the fact that for several years, both the state and districts took a hiatus from paying into pensions. This is not something that all of a sudden people are getting more in their pensions. This is a direct reflection of the years that we're not paid into. When we weren't paying into it, we accumulated a huge fund balance. I think it was as high as $44 million at one point in 2007 and 8 when this contract was negotiated. When the prior contract was negotiated, Dr. Volcano, you are correct. We had 545 teachers in this district in 2004 when the previous contract was negotiated. 2007-8 contract, when it was negotiated, was an early bird contract. There was no threat of a strike. It was put through, it was an early bird contract. You are correct. The teachers were hired in good faith. And as I stand here, I will not negotiate in public. That is not, and I've been very upfront with all of you. My phone is absolutely available and it has not been ringing. So any of you are more than welcome to call me. I will not negotiate in public. That is not something that we are willing to do. We're also not accounting for the overspending that occurred in the last couple years. $2.2 million last year and $1.3 million in salaries that weren't accounted for. We opened our contract last year and it doesn't seem to have done anything except for account for the overspending and the unbudgeting. That's disheartening. And when I've asked, what do you want? All I hear is open your contract. I don't get an answer. Teachers have asked me, what do they want from us? I don't know. Teachers are not aware of the specifics of what's to happen. They want to know, what does taking away co-teaching mean? What does teaming mean? Nobody on the teaching level has absolutely any idea of what this is to look like. This has not been shared to them. We are in the dark as well and would love to know what this means for education because those students are our top priority. I sat in those negotiations last year. I've offered up my negotiations notes. No one has taken advantage of that. When we sat down at that table, and I believe there is a board member who was in that room, we all went around and said, what are things that you will not walk out of this room without obtaining? And we all stated our goals. Each of us went around the table and stated our goals. And we all agreed that we would not walk out of that room unless it was something that we could all live with. I'm not sitting in a room at a middle school right now, so we walked out of that room with something that everybody could live with. That's what we walked out with. Our agreement was to continue discussions on how we could help save money. The day after, did not have one meeting until February of this year. That's where things stand from my end. You all know how to reach me, and I look forward to hearing from you. By the way, if you know a teacher, happy Teacher Appreciation Week.
Ms. Broadhead. Thank you, ma'am, for addressing me. If you can come back to the podium so I don't have to look over Peter to speak to you. I think it needs to be made clear that I don't think anybody is blaming the teachers for our issue. I will tell you as a new board member, there has been tremendous wasteful spending, mismanagement. I'll agree with that. Mr. Corbett, making his feelings known to public education hurt us too. I don't think anybody has come to the teachers or looked at the teachers and said, this is your fault, that I know of. I know I haven't. I don't know anybody else that has. We all agree that our teachers are some of the best and deserve everything that we can offer to them. Our issue is not coming to the teachers and saying, you did wrong, you have to fix it. We're not saying that at all. What we're saying is, we need help. We don't want to cut 40 teachers, one teacher, so we're not coming and saying, fix what you did wrong, because I don't believe the teachers did anything wrong. If somebody offered me a contract, I'm taking it as well. All right? What the issue we're having is, we're in a very, very, very bad way. At the end of the school year, you probably know better than me, what is it, 7 public schools in Philadelphia is going to be shut down? The other way, I mean, they're closing public schools down, left and right. We're trying to stop that. I've heard from you and numerous teachers and administrators. We are so pleased with this new board. You guys are really trying. We're happy you guys, the new board members and this and that. And thank you from all of us for that. So we're not coming and saying the teachers are wrong, they don't deserve it. That's not what we're saying at all, because we believe our teachers are great teachers. I've said it numerous times publicly and privately. What we're saying is, we need help. We don't want to cut 40 teachers. It's going to hurt the children. We don't want to cut 40 teachers. It's going to hurt the teachers. You have teachers that are, and I know you're aware of this, I'm preaching to the choir to you,
Keep going, you're good.
but teachers are having babies, right?
Not me, for the record.
Not,
not
well,
me.
I don't know. I mean, if
I
you are,
am not
congratulations.
having a baby.
But there's teachers planning families. There's teachers, and they're calling me, emailing me, as Mr. Ryder said, and saying, can you do this, can you do that? They're going nuts. So, it's not fair to them either. So we're not looking at the teachers and saying, you're to blame. We know you're not to blame. We're looking to you and saying, we need help. And if what you and everybody else has said, we see you guys making a difference, the new board, you guys are looking at things you never looked at before, you're being more transparent, being more open, then trust that we're trying to do the right thing here, but we can't do it by ourselves. We need help.
And I'll say the same thing I said to Mr. Myers at the end of last school year. We need to stop arguing amongst one another and start walking down to Harrisburg. $3.6 million gone. If they have their way with Senate Bill 1450, we won't have a say in anything that happens to financially distressed schools, because they'll send teams in, and you guys will have to approve their changes.
I agree with you. And listen, if we can all march down to Harrisburg and Corbett will open it up, I'd say let's do it. But I think we all agree that there are groups in Harrisburg every day lobbying, campaigning, and picketing. Unfortunately, our governor, and I will go on records with my feelings, is anti-public education. So we can bang our heads off the wall and hope that Corbett will have an epiphany and give us some money back, or we can be realistic and we can all work together. Not because the teachers made a mistake, because it's not the teacher's fault, but we need the help.
But when you add 3.6 to 2.2 in overspending and
I
1.3
agree.
in under-budgeted salaries,
I agree 100%. And I can
and
assure
I don't
you.
teach math intentionally.
Right, and I assure you, you're not going to see that going forward. And I think that we have shown that we are a heck of a lot different than people you've dealt with in the past on any level, whether it be administration, whether it be board. I think we have proved ourselves, in my opinion, and from comments I've heard from people in the district, that we're really trying here. We're not trying to, cause anybody problems. We're not trying to get over on anybody. We're really trying to work. I know there was issues with the overspending. We're just as mad about that as the teachers are, because we walked into it. They overspent $3 million here. You guys, you deal with it. So we're just as upset. But at the same time, none of us should have to pay for other people's broken dishes, right? But we have to move on. And it was wrong. And I mean, we can go all the way back years from now and give the turf field back that I still don't know why we put there. But we can't do any of that. But we have to move forward as a team. All of us. We have to move forward together. So please don't think that we're coming to you because it's your fault. It's not your fault. But we need your help. Or we're going to be laying off teachers. We're going to be screwing the education of our children and keep putting it on the taxpayers. Not because of anything you did. Again, we know where the problems came from. Mismanagement, wasteful spending, Governor Corbett, we know. But we can't make Corbett do anything. We can't take all the wasteful spending and give him receipts and say, wait a minute, can we do that over? We can't do it. I wish we could. But, I mean, we just need help. That's all. Thank you for listening.
Anyone else want me while I'm here?
Yeah, I would just want to clarify one thing. I hope that no one interpreted me talking about the pension increases that we were, you know, the employees are going to receive more pensions. It was our share, the district's share of the obligation. 8.4% this year, 12.4 next year, estimated to go to 15, and then 18%. So it's the district share, not that anyone, I hope that was interpreted that way.
Just wanted to clarify for
Okay.
the record.
Thank you.
And I was not in your negotiating sessions last year, Glenda. But on May 26th, I was at that meeting, and the comment on sustainability came up multiple times. That's a fact, okay? I don't know what was talked about with Paul Blunt in your negotiations, and yes, I will believe you. Without question, I will. But at that meeting, that's my recollection, and I think that's pretty close to being right.
And our response was, because we were this shocked hearing it then, because we should have heard that behind closed doors.
That's where negotiations belong, is behind closed doors. And,
I understand that.
yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, and we, for the record, Paul Blunt was never in the room because we would not meet if he was in the room for the way he spoke to us. But he is the one that came up with the salary scale. Because there were discrepancies that had to be fixed later in the titles, which we had no access to fix because he had them.
Any other comments?
I just want to say one thing. The numbers at that time, at that meeting, absolutely indicated, as the board looked them over, that it was unsustainable. And those of us that voted no for the change in your contract because of that. Because it was very clear that you were giving something that was not still going to be sustainable. And therefore, I personally didn't feel comfortable with your change because I knew that it was going to give a false pretense to the following year. Absolutely. And I understand that what you're saying now was your interpretation of what was the communication behind closed doors that you had. But at the board level, we received the information and the numbers, and it was clear that it was not going to correct a problem. And the problem was throughout the district, overspending, you know, limitations in money coming in from federal and state monies, combination of things and obligations that the district had, whether it was bonds or contractual, it was across the board. We were overextended.
Well,
So
and we
I-
were being told, on the other hand, that every time we had left a meeting, you guys were being communicated with. Every time, we had about 8 meetings, and every time you guys were being communicated with.
We were.
After every meeting.
We were communicated.
The
and that-
idea of what was sustainable was us rolling back to the 2008, 2009 salary scale. That's what we were told. And at every single stand, at the end of every meeting, you guys were briefed, we went back and briefed the rest of our negotiating team. In 2008, 2009, rolling back to those salary scales wasn't something that could happen at that time. In 2008, 2009, Easton Area School District teachers made on average about $9,000 less than any other teacher in the entire Lehigh Valley.
Right.
If you add the $9,000 that we made less than teachers in 2009-10, and the additional $6,000 on average that we made less the following year, we would be the absolutely lowest paid teachers in the entire Lehigh Valley. The idea of this contract was to attract quality teachers. And if any of you want these numbers, I am more than happy to share them with you.
And I'm certainly not disagreeing with you. My point is that it was clear that the changes that were being made last year were not going to correct the problem that the district had across the board, not just your contract, but across the board as we went forward, that there needed to be due diligence across the board with everything. And so, to your point.
Okay, any other comments?
I
Bob?
knew he was coming.
Unfortunately, this is where we are today, and looking backwards is like looking at these empty chairs. Irrelevant. So my question is, will you meet with Mr. Fainall tomorrow to set the stage for something to be done over the next 2 weeks?
I have direction from my rep council that we are not entertaining contractual concessions. in May, when we've been trying to discuss this since January, we don't know what you want from us, period. We've been told nothing, open your contract. That's like me telling my son to do something and not telling him exactly what I want him to do. Last time we were told that, it was rolled back to 2008, 2009. I would love to talk to Mr. Fainall. I will entertain the conversation, but I am telling you the direction that we have from our rep council.
Jenna,
It is May.
Is your direction no because they haven't heard what?
Our
they're being
direction
asked?
is no because of the things that have been done in the last several years, and the way the spring has gone for us for the last 4 years.
So it has nothing to do with them not knowing what's what. So they're not willing to let you sit down with
Frank,
Mike
I
and-
will show you what is shared with them. Everything
No,
that
no,
I can possibly share is
I'm not
shared.
saying that. I'm saying.
Well, because
um,
that is something that's a situation. I've
but
shared
I guess- so-
everything.
Right, but I mean, my question was.
Until today, I did not share the retirement package until today.
Right. My question was, did they give you directive, no, don't do anything because they didn't know what was being offered? Or no, because of what you just said, things that happened in the past? So they wouldn't be open to allowing you to meet with Simonetta just to see what he's, just,
I'm allowed to have conversations.
no, but I mean, but, you know, nobody wants to waste your time, Mike's time, or anybody else's. Is it feasible that you could sit with Mike and see what Mike is thinking, or the negotiating team is
Frank, have
thinking?
I ever been unavailable?
No, but what I mean is.
That's your answer.
But the question is, I'm not talking about just having him talk to you just to have conversation. I mean, if you know in your heart that you're gonna take and they're not doing anything with it, let's not waste all of our time. Or, you know, your time and his time. My question is, do you feel that if you sat with him and got some ideas that you could take back and maybe?
Rep
No, I
council gave us
understand
the
that. That's
direction,
why
and it
my-
was overwhelming. It was
Right,
16
I
to
understand
4.
that. My question was, did they say that because of your previous
That was a
statement
question.
that they didn't know
The question was,
anything?
what do they want from us? That was a question. It's been a question several times. I get the emails. too.
Right, well, that's what I'm
I
saying.
can't keep up with the amount of emails I
So
get
if they
today.
heard what is wanted, are they willing to hear what's wanted since they said that they've never heard that? Or is that not really matter, what is wanted? That's my question.
We've been trying to have these conversations since January.
You know, Frank can't answer, every single person has a reason for saying no. The reason why they say no, we don't want to consider concessions. The way to answer that would be to answer for every individual member that has their individual ideas behind what's going on.
I mean, I guess, I don't know if my question, if I'm not phrasing it right. Jenna said that, you know, they keep saying, we're not doing anything, we don't know what they want, we don't know what they want. So my question was it no, we're not doing anything because we don't know what they want? Or no, we're not doing anything because of the way we were treated in the past? That's my question.
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that after going through what we went through last spring and renegotiating $27 million and it not helping, that's a big concern for people. It's a huge concern for people. Our contract was open. It didn't help.
Well, it did help. It did help.
There were no cuts last year.
It absolutely, you guys
It
did
saved
help.
teachers, so there was a benefit to that. And I thank you for doing that, because obviously you didn't have to do that. You obviously negotiated in good faith.
We did.
I understand that. So coming back with $27 million, hey, we'll do this. I take my hat off to you. But again, I'm gonna go back to, it was unsustainable. That's what was told me. That's what I heard May 26th. There were 710 teachers there. I know that. Obviously, it's not gonna fit them in there. But the reality of the people who were there that night heard the term unsustainability. I know that.
I think the best bet at this point is we're not getting any further tonight on the issue. I think going back, you know, maybe with your rep council, seeing what they're thinking or whatever, if there's an
We
opportunity.
met yesterday.
Oh, did you?
We did meet yesterday. I held a special meeting after the last board meeting. Invited people to come. We held a general membership meeting. I've had 4 meetings in the last 2 months. We usually have 1 meeting a month. I have. I genuinely, truly have.
Okay. Well, as I said, I don't think we're getting anywhere further here tonight, but we can
Anyone
put us
wants
on-
to reach me, you know how.
We got your phone number.
Call me.
Thank you, Jenna. Okay, any other comments, public comments? Drew?
Drew Anderson, 611 Broadhead Street, Easton. Most of my life, I've been on the management side of the equation, decidedly anti-union and associated with people who broke unions, sometimes not by pleasant ways. But, you know, I mean it in a polite sense. I think your union is weak and gutless. They've got a contract, and I think a contract means a lot, and they need to fight it. Now, it's nice to talk about throwing 40 teachers under the bus, but you know what? That's life. You got to move forward and do it. And unfortunately, the problem is, if you throw 40 teachers under the bus this year and 40 under the bus next year and 40 under the bus the year after, you're never going to solve the problems either, because the systematic problems are someplace else, and I haven't heard anybody address them. Now, yeah, we can save toilet paper, or we probably can find half a dozen teachers that are less than productive, and we probably can find a dozen teaching situations that are highly unproductive, and guess what? Out of that dozen positions, I'll bet you most of them are associated with special ed, remedial ed, and other kinds of mandatory inefficiencies that we're strangled with. But interestingly, I can crunch the numbers pretty well. One of my friends is a tax attorney. He calls me and asks me to crunch his numbers for him. Some of the people, if they left, would go out with $500,000 sweeteners to their packages. I can get you there. Others would go out with zero. If you're a 55-year-old teacher, you will go out with roughly 20 times the sweetener as somebody who is 65. Now, if you're a 65-year-old teacher, I would suggest to you you are stupid to accept the package which I believe is on the table. Now, my wife asks me stupid questions, and I give her stupid answers. I said, take a sabbatical, go back and add 15 more stupid credits to your resume, and take the next step, and come back and talk about it. There's other ways, if you are an intelligent teacher, to play your cards. And management hasn't put anything on the table which would excite too many people other than stupid people, or somebody who really wanted to go do something else and are going to throw in the towel. I don't think you've given your business manager, COO, some real serious cards to put on the table to motivate people. If I owned a position that was worth X dollars because of tenure and seniority, and that position would pay me a lifetime earnings stream to the age of 90, you're not going to get it from me for $2,500. My attitude would be, the last man in or woman in, you're right, somebody's got to go. But an intelligent teacher smart enough to teach in Easton would be dumb to take what's the current cards on the table. No, I don't know what the right cards are. And believe me, most of my life I've spent on the anti-union side of the equation. And I think there are some ways to emasculate or eviscerate the union. But we haven't discussed those, and I don't think those are the cards you want. So until you're willing to put some serious cards on the table, you know, I mean, sure, there's going to be some people who are going to take it. There's some people who are going to go anyway, so they're going to take it anyway. But you're not going to take the top off the boat. You're going to take a couple people, and you're going to have to do what you have to do at the bottom. I don't dispute you have to do it from the bottom. But if you want to play poker, you haven't put any poker chips on the table worth talking about. Seriously. If somebody gets $500,000 and somebody else gets zero, the person getting zero needs a sucker award. And I don't think our teachers are quite that dumb. Do you? I hope not. I don't know how to solve the problem, but I know what won't work, and that is no serious poker cards on the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to address the board this evening? Okay, seeing no hands, that brings the end of the Finance Committee to an end. There's really no items that we're moving forward at this point in time. The budget will be on in 2 weeks on the agenda. The only other open item here currently is if there's any other public comment on non-agenda items. And I'm not seeing any hands flying up. That's the next piece. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.